Oh.
Okay, everyone is filtering in. Welcome, welcome. We're so thrilled to have you. My name's Ingrid Wells, Senior Manager of Academic Programs for Fine Arts, and you are here tonight, this evening with us for the BFA Thesis Conversations. This evening, we're going to have some more presentation by our Printmedia students. We are so thrilled to celebrate this moment with them. Our host, Kari, why don't you go ahead and take it over?
Thanks, Ingrid. And everyone, please excuse, there's some noise in the background because I am here on campus. And welcome to the BFA Thesis Conversations. It's so exciting to get to know the Printmedia students more today through presentations on their work, and we'll be doing a short discussion. And by we, I mean Jamie Knight, who's also here. Hey, Jamie. We'll be doing 10-minute presentations with the students, and then Jamie and I will give some feedback for 10 minutes, and then we'll move on to the next presentation. There are 4 in total today. We have Krystal, Alex, Juliana, and Joseph, all Printmedia students. And sorry, again, Jamie Knight is a faculty member in Printmedia. So he's worked with 3 of the students, and I teach in ceramics and the first year program, and have had the pleasure to work with Alex and Juliana this semester. I wanted to mention that the chat will be saved. So feel free to put in any questions or comments or notes of congratulations for the students in that chat, and they will receive a copy of that. So if you want to say hello, please do so. If you can, whenever possible, please keep yourself muted so that we can make sure that we're hearing everyone who's presenting or discussing clearly. And let's see, the program will be recorded, and you will be able to share it with friends and family members and colleagues and professionals in the field post after this live presentation. So watch for that. Thank you to all the faculty who are present. Thank you, Ingrid, for all of your hard work, and of course the CCA exhibitions team. And now I would like to jump into our land acknowledgement. California College of the Arts campuses are located in the Huichin and Yelamu, also known as Oakland and San Francisco, on the unceded territories of Chochenyo and Ramaytush Ohlone peoples. We recognize the historic discrimination and violence inflicted upon Indigenous peoples in California and the Americas, including their forced removal from ancestral lands and the deliberate and systemic destruction of their communities and culture. The CCA honors Indigenous peoples, past, present, and future, here and around the world, and we wish to pay respect to local elders, including those of the lands from which you are joining us virtually today. If you are unsure of whose land you are currently residing upon, we encourage you to visit native-land.ca. And I see that Krystal has joined us. Today, the order will, we will begin with Krystal and then hear a presentation from Alex, Juliana, and finally Joseph. Krystal, are you with us and ready to share your screen? Okay. Krystal, can you hear me?
I can hear you, but I can hear you through Alex's computer. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, it's all the way up. Oh, no.
Do you want to use mine?
Oh, but no. Oh, that's fun. So mine's working.
Okay.
Sorry. I just sharing this screen. Hang on 1 second. Okay.
This is where we have our quick intermission music. Song and dance.
I just have to, I share the screen. Got it.
Okay, excellent. And again, you have 10 minutes.
Working, good.
I think some people are talking about it, that your sound is working.
It's not anymore? Oh. Can you hear me? Okay. Okay, that's great. I just have to open my notes. Okay. Okay. Hi. My name is Krystal. I'm a print media in the print media program at CCA, coming with a background in social sciences and specifically sociology and education, which you'll see tends to be a driving force behind a lot of my work. So again, my name is Krystal Cotton. I live in Oakland and I'm a Bay Area native, born and raised in Berkeley. My family is small, close-knit. My mom was a single mom raising my brother and I, and through social programs like after-school programs, and then I was also a camp kid. I was exposed to a lot of crafts at a young age, which spurred my interests in the arts, I think, and working with my hands. I've always been a tactile, hands-on person and creative with my hands. And creating with my hands is one of the things I enjoy doing the most. So that's my brother. Okay. So I'm sorry, let me just go back to that last one because it's better to look at. My academic career has been a little longer than most. I started at the New School in New York, then transferred to UC Santa Cruz, and where I earned a BA in sociology with a minor in education, and then academic pursuits that are directly linked to my artistic practice now. Those things are just kind of flow throughout my the work that you'll see. I try to see the world through a big picture lens. In fact, I just kind of naturally see the world through a big picture lens that sociologists train kind of looking at the world, and combine that with a very personal experience of viewing art drives me in all of the things that I do, with materials and yeah, just being inspired in like master study kind of things. Okay, so Kehinde Wiley's portraiture is particularly inspiring because I admire the way he inserts like Black bodies and Black people into historical imagery and portraiture where they were typically not included. So his work injects sheer power, I think, notions of power and privilege into history and into Blackness. Ta-Nehisi Coates is another person that I try to read as much as I possibly can. I love his articles, his books. His articles are basically like books, so that's I just enjoy them a lot. And some of the ones that I have read and that I think I reference like more often than not are Between the World and Me and Our First White President, which is, it's not actually, yeah. Donald Trump is our first white president. Yeah, that's a really great article. If you haven't read it, you should read it. And The Case for Reparations. So yeah, and so I love the way that he looks at the world. And in particular, actually, we both seem to have grown up in like very agnostic homes. So it is interesting to have that kind of conversation, I feel like, with him on my own terms and stuff. And then Sony Clark. Sony Clark is another person that I recently discovered her work, and she kind of blew me away. I love her use of fabrics and beads and hair, in particular, actually hair, and other objects that create almost a surreal, like kind of imagery. It takes on issues that drive me to work as well, with racial and social injustice and experiences of African Americans in the United States. Okay. The artist statement. The most prominent themes in my work are racial and social justice, but broadly, my work tends to respond to current events. I am sometimes looking to show empathy and humanity, to reveal a sense of unity. Other times I am doing something far from it, attempting to bring outrage or spark a sense of urgency. I'm interested in our collective memories as a society and how we choose to remember certain events, how they interpret a couple generations later, and as a big picture kind of person, how they look from a sociological lens. Either an attempt to bring light to a topic that deserves discourse, I think, or to make light of something in the news or part of the community. I tend to take cues from patterns of behavior or thought. I like to focus on patterns in society, patterns in my own psychology, and how the remains of those patterns affect me and society today. As the person that can so easily get caught up in the dread of these intense moments, I also tend to make art with a sense of humor and a touch of sarcasm. It helps me pull out the minute details and see kind of the big picture. I like to work in the abstract, but all my inspiration comes from specific feelings or images that I feel most effective when presented as such. When it comes to the craft, I like to dedicate the time and effort to refining the skills and practice of printmaking, honing in on meticulous work and detailed artistry of a process like etching, or practicing skilled and hand of illustration, which I'm still working on, with the unforgiving image transferring of lithography. But at its most basic, however, the joy I feel in the studio comes from getting to make a giant, passionate mess and then furiously and impeccably clean it back up. So these are some of my works. This one is just called King. My main purpose in creating these prints was to ask about what civil rights looks like today, basically. How far have we come? Has anything changed? Or how far do we need to go? Drawing inspiration in a portrait my mom drew in 1972 of Dr. King that hangs prominently in the living room of my house. I found myself wondering what MLK might think about where we are as a nation right now. For my mom, Dr. King was the savior. He represented not only the cry for equal rights for African Americans, but issues that were inherently human rights issues. My relationship to the civil rights movement of today is similar in some ways, but wildly different in others. It's something I feel called to explore and question in my art, not only as part of the African American community existing still within the cosmic period of great urgency, but because these times of urgency are not unique or uncommon, and it's always someone's job to expose the issues time and time again.
And Krystal, you have a couple minutes left.
This is a series called Just Series in Paisley. And it is of more civil rights and also current leaders or just figures in kind of African American culture, I guess, or just African American people. Today's civil rights questions have shifted to increasingly more complicated and intricate and intricate, laced with many hidden atrocities, I feel like, which is part of the reason why I think I like the paisley and the lace kind of feeling that it gives. And why these, these prints are kind of falling in between the paisley at certain parts, in certain moments. The composition of the print is more prominently inspired by Kenda Wiley's, and the last one inspired by Kenda Wiley's style of portraiture, attempting to position something meaningful from the past into conversation with conflicts of today. It also asks, the viewer to consider the separation between our image of leaders like Dr. King and W.E.B. Du Bois, Malcolm X, and I'll tell you the names of the people in a second. But as real people, and how many times we've seen people use quotes from Dr. King, especially now, to justify otherwise excuses, like to excuse the very system that we're trying to dismantle. So this series of prints is, following the same pattern as the last one, and the iterations in the print seen in the series feature a much more subdued or whitewashed pastel color palette. Each color a gradation of a color complementary to the primary colors of the first iteration print. The complementary colors in direct comparison to the red, white, and blue suggest the opposing side of patriotic America. The underbelly, the underdog, the counterculture, the movers, the shakers, disruptors. Like the print before it, each edition of the series features prominent African-American figures throughout. And these ones, though, it is W.E.B. Du Bois, Malcolm X, Daisy Bates, Elizabeth Eckford, Coretta Scott King, Kathleen Cleaver, Angela Davis, and Colin Kaepernick. And spliced, sunken, elevated, and decapitated by the paisley, a tool used to force the viewer to piece together a more complete image, a more complete understanding. These, after seeing the video of Kimberly Jones passionately speak about she's a writer, she passionately spoke about the protests that took place after the murder of George Floyd. I was struck by a few of her phrases, "fuck your target," and the person who fixes the situation is killing us. Later on on the internet, just looking at images, I found an image of a stop sign, kind of with just someone had scratched into it, stop, killing us, and it was in relation to all of the destruction that had happened in Minnesota, and so I wanted to use depictions of crows, because they often have relation to Jim Crow era and stuff like that, and put it in with a mangled building that in one image is definitely Target and the other image could be anything. And the final work ended up being a triptych of the same first image, and then just one in the middle, of the one to the right. Oh, that's too far. Okay. This one is called Sheltered Unsafe, and it's a line of cut relief that I started working on after the killing of Breonna Taylor. Struck by the outrageous nature of that event, I chose to depict a silhouette of a Black woman nude against perspective skewed tiles marked with holes and curled in a defensive position, just kind of suggesting that we were all supposed to be sheltered in place, and shelter is not always safe for some people. So in other work that I really enjoy doing, which I have a love of textiles, and I've discovered a new passion for it, and dyeing in particular, and quilting recently. Quilting, I am inspired by what I've learned about history of American quilting, like the quilters of Keys Bend, the work of Faith Ringgold, and many others. And I hope to integrate my love of color, fabric, and interest in printmaking. I see a huge potential in that combination. So, and then finally, the last part of what I've been up to now is working. Other work I'm currently pursuing is a continuation of my previous paisley print, this time kind of choosing a stylized pattern of cotton flowers and as a backdrop. And it's, this time, I've become increasingly interested in cotton, given that it's both my last name and the core crop that enslaved enslaved Africans harvested. It can be considered the crop of which America's national wealth was built, I think. I want to explore my own relationship to cotton, its prevalence in so many of the products I use every day, and the irony of its identity in the American psyche. And then so yeah, a lot of my work, I'm always trying to give a nod to our history, to the people and political and social movements that paved the way for the progress we continue to try and make and do make. So, and then I also wanted to thank everybody for being here and for their support and encouragement in all of this last final part of this adventure, I guess, that is CCA. So yeah, and then that's my contact info. I don't have any social media, so emails.
Krystal, thank you so much for sharing your work with us.
Oh.
Good job. All right, excellent. Jamie, I'll let you begin if you'd like. And we have about 7 minutes.
Okay. First, I'd like to say thank you, Krystal. We haven't worked together, even though we're both in the print media department. That is really nice to see your work. One of the things that I noticed from your presentation that I really appreciate, particularly with this most recent work that you showed us, is it's nice to see a technical progression in the work, and that it seems like you're really over whatever your first image that you showed and the most recent image that you showed, that you sort of made some technical progressions in the style in your mastery of the media. I also want to say something that I think I found pretty interesting is this sort of in the more current work as compared to some of the earlier work, is your embrace of the cotton flower as a sort of more of a self-created pattern rather than relying on the paisley. And paisley is a historic pattern that comes from India and Persia, and then was sort of adopted by the hippies, and it's this like the cotton flower pattern speaks so much more directly to the content of your work and the intent behind the work, that I encourage you to sort of continue with that exploration. And I don't know, it just made me think of, I don't know if you know our grad student, Trina Robinson, but she's working, she's a paper maker and a photographer, and she's getting cotton and making her own paper from cotton. She's on has a very similar interest. So if you have an opportunity, her show is up in Wattis this week with this week of the grads, and I would encourage you to go check that out. And if you can search her out and talk to her, I think it'd be a wonderful person to have conversations with. You're muted, by the way.
Krystal, did you want to say something?
Sorry. She is the drawer above mine in the print studio. So I know her name, but I've never met her, but that's great.
She's great.
Great. No, thank you.
Krystal, thank you for the thoughtful presentation. I'm excited about the way that you walked us through your pieces. I think one of the things that you mentioned in your artist statement is introducing humor into the work, and you have a great sense of humor. So I would encourage you to keep folding that in and seeing where it fits best. I agree with Jamie about the comments around cotton, and I think that there was one piece that you showed us that had 4 images and then 4 of each image with the civil rights leaders. I think that piece in particular stuck out to me. I was excited to read the different characters in those works and see how you were bringing the different leaders together into one piece with one another. Can you describe why, where your thought was around the repetition of the images? Why do 4, and what were you trying to convey with that?
I think mostly it was kind of, I mean, there were 5 of each, and the repetition, I've always enjoyed repetition in printmaking because it's something that is so prevalent and so easy to do, especially with screen printing. And it also, I think it has an impact that is a bit more, it's kind of yelling at you, right? It's like, I feel like it's like, you know, the bold and the cap lock letters, you know, rather than just kind of one piece. And I just think they kind of, the way that their imagery kind of melted away at the bottom too, because I tried to choose some that were like well registered, or more like registered better at the top, and then they kind of became a little bit less, like a little bit more skewed at the bottom, which is something I've also done with some of the king prints as well, but I didn't include those ones. But yeah, so I really enjoyed that kind of visual, like, deterioration of the print as a you know, mostly as like a metaphor for yeah.
That makes sense. I think that strategy is working for you, and I would encourage you to continue with it. And I guess my last comment for you is, in the beginning of your presentation, you mentioned Clark's use of hair and beads within their work, and I would love to see more, similar to the cotton and the paisley. I'd love to see more textures featured in your work. So I would love for you to consider having maybe hair be a background, or adding different elements that that encourage texture.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I think that's a good point, Kari, too. The other thing that I just want to say, you know, you're working with these really kind of serious themes. You're working with history, you're working with like contemporary social issues, I guess you would say. And I think, and I like this idea of that you mentioned about like thinking about printmaking and thinking about the multiple and thinking about the deterioration of the image over time, and like what happens and how that can be a metaphor for some of these social issues that go on. And I would just say that, like, if you're going to continue with this work, like really working to bring the materiality of the artwork and your mastery of the technical aspects of it, bring that up to the level of the content, and like keep working towards that. And then also make sure that all of those choices that you're making are made with intention. And so, like, if you're really interested in exploring the degradation of the image, like, degrade that image with intention as you print. So does that mean allowing the ink to dry in the screen, or, you know, working with other kinds of screen fillers or things to sort of block out parts of the image as you print it over time, or printing and printing and printing and printing to the point where the image becomes obliterated, and then thinking about what you need to bring out to make it legible. And I think that there's a lot of ways that you can explore these themes that are more nuanced, more complex, and that you can do that through the imagery and also through the process. And so I would encourage you to keep exploring those things.
Okay, good, Jamie. Thank you so much, Krystal. Thank you so much. We really appreciate
Thank you guys.
all these comments.
Really appreciate the feedback. It's so great.
Thank you, Krystal.
All right, excellent. So next up we have Alex. Alex, are you ready to present and share your screen?
Yeah, give me a second. I'm gonna share right now.
Okay, wonderful. And just a quick reminder, everyone, you are welcome and encouraged to put your notes or questions or comments for the presenters into the chat.
Can you guys see that? Cool. Oh wait, I guess I'm one slide back. There we go. Let me start my little timer so I don't talk too much. Okay, I'm Alex. I'm a print major from San Jose. I'm in Oakland now. I didn't know what to do for interest, so I was like, I like cars and printmaking. This picture of my cat. I don't own that car anymore, unfortunately. I had to sell it during the pandemic. And I guess I developed my interest in art because my mom does ceramics and my dad does photography. So I was always being dragged around to shows and things growing up. So I was introduced to it from an early age. And then it was only in high school that I think I wanted to be like do conservation stuff. And then in high school is when I sort of had more of an interest in like making stuff instead of just looking at stuff. Let's see, so my inspirations, Goya's Capriccios series is like very technically inspirational to me. Like I like the aquatints. Like aquatint is something that I'm really have focused a lot of time into, like getting technically better at. And so looking at his series and just the tones and how he does that kind of stuff is like very inspirational to me. And then more from the concept side, Michael Hurley's music is like very inspirational to me because his songs are very like airy and whimsical, and they kind of talk about memory and looking, you know, he's always looking back on his life in this sort of like tall tale kind of interesting way, and he speaks on memory in a really interesting way. So I'm very inspired by his music. These are some older prints. Like it's weird. I transferred here from SFAI, so I kind of had this weird like separation in my head in my work where like I've been sort of on the same track throughout my whole college time, but I have this weird division in my head between the work that was like from SFAI and here. So like these prints are from SFAI and these are like much smaller. When I came to CCA, I was in the cusp of working much larger. So I like showing these because these are really small. I don't know the exact sizes, but like just big-ish. And they're a lot more representational, like there's figures in the back and things like that. So I like to show that one at the beginning. This one is also from SFAI. And this is sort of like aquatints and things like that. So it's showing sort of the Goya inspiration in terms of like just trying to separate out lots of different tones. And this one too is like printed on 2 sheets of paper. So there's this band that goes through the middle that's a little darker. So yeah, I also like, I like showing this one because it sort of like, I'm really focused on doing prints that are like sort of against like the multiple, or like I don't do I think a print is successful, or tend to be drawn to a print when like I know that I couldn't pull another one that was the same as it. So I think there's almost like a painterly interest that I have in the idea that I can like take a matrix and like make something from it that couldn't be redone. So like most of my prints are sort of one-off things, and I think I like enjoy that a lot. Another print, this is from CCA. And this is more recent. This is like the yellow in the background of this one is something I started doing at CCA a lot more, just like printing the tarnish from my plate. So I'll intentionally oxidize the plate and then scrape off the tarnish and mix it into a transparent base so that like sort of the matrix or the plate can like live with the print. So like it can, part of the matrix is actually in the print. So I've been having a lot of fun doing that kind of stuff. And then the big thing that I've been building to, working on, and finishing up at the end of my time in college and at CCA is like this big copper bell, which is sort of like the centerpiece of my senior show. And I've been talking about doing it for a super long time, and thought about all these different ways that I could do it. Like over last summer, I built a little forge in my backyard thinking that I could like cast it somehow, and that didn't end up working. And then I was gonna do metal spinning, which is like copper pots and pans are made, like it's on a lathe sort of thing, and that didn't end up working out. And then I had a good relationship with Russ from the jewelry department, and we started talking about it, and I decided to do a metal raising. And so I worked with Curtis and Russ from the jewelry department, and they helped me out immensely to get this all worked out. So I'm like super grateful to them for their amazing support and help through the whole process. But especially over this last, like the week leading up to my show over spring break, like I came in every day, and Russ worked with me and made this beautiful raised bell. And then I worked with Jamie, because I'm in his papermaking class, to make these like paper copies or molds of the bell. And then I did etchings on the surface of the bell, and then inked it up like a regular intaglio print, and then put the paper copies on top, and then used a mallet and a little sandbag that I created to like basically print the surface of the bell while ringing it. And so this is sort of a culmination of my line of thinking to do with my with what I've been thinking about like since the beginning of SFAI. And then I just have pictures from my show. So this is another print that I did at CCA that I'm super proud of. It was sort of a big departure for me too, because I like am not a big user of color, and like this was a big departure for me. And a lot of these are like also sort of technical fascinations for me. Like this print I was super excited about because it's just one straight out of the can yellow, but the plate tone made these different tones, almost like green tones and brown tones and all sorts of things. So like I'm really interested in finding ways to like both bring the matrix into the print, and again having things that aren't repeatable, where like it's just the nature of the plate created those tones. So like there's sort of a release of responsibility on my part to like find these tones. Like I'm like setting up the circumstance for them to be there, and then like hoping that they show up. And I'm really excited by those kind of things. So more pictures from my show. A big thing that I did in my show is I had my plates presented with my prints, which was super fun, especially with the bell sort of as like the culmination of all those efforts, having the prints and the bell itself there. Because I think it also connects a line of thinking that I have in terms of like almost having print be like a form of sculpture, because print is unique in the sense that like you know, you're working on these physical objects, and I definitely covet these physical objects. So there's like definitely a through line of a sculptural thinking in what I'm doing. So it was fun to have like the bell sort of be a more apparent representation of that, while also sort of having all the other ones there, which sort of connected that a little more. So more pictures for my show. And then I had the long print on the back wall. You can't really see, I have a better picture of it later. Or I guess I don't. Like the little print in the corner there is sort of like the beginning mark of that. It was like the lead roller that I made in the senior year of high school.
Alex, we can't hear you. I don't know. Can
We
anyone else?
lost your audio.
Wait,
Does that work?
can you guys hear me now through Krystal? Okay, cool. I don't know where I lost you guys, but I was talking about the print on the wall is sort of like something I also did really recently up to the like week before my senior show, and it was sort of the opposite end, like whereas the bell is like the culmination and ending point of this line of thinking in my work, like the lead roller is something I made in senior year of high school that I never ended up really getting a chance to do anything with, and then a weekish before my senior show, I was like, it's important to find a way to like bring that in, so I have like the full span of like my very, very early beginning of thinking, and then capping it off with this bell that I thought about for a long time. So that was something that I was really happy all came together. Let's see. Plans for the future. I really want to further build out my home studio setup, and I have a big focus on trying to like make my access to printmaking not be reliant on like a large institution. Like I sort of yeah, that's like very important to me. So I'm that's definitely in the future plans, and eventually even I would like to like, you know, sort of a pipe dream, but I'd like to like be able to have a studio that would be able to support other people coming in, working collaboratively with artists and helping them support, you know, on a very small scale, not like a true print house or anything like that, but like just being able to work with people and give them a space to work where they're not reliant on these larger institutions to support their work. So that's sort of the end goal for me. That's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. That's great. And actually, do you mind just keeping your screen up and maybe popping back to one of the images, yeah, of your show? Exactly. Okay, good. Thank you for your presentation. I think it's always, we had the opportunity to see this show in class, and I like the way that you're trying to capture it. There was a lot going on in there, and I really appreciate the combination of these sculptural items and the prints together. They're really working, and there's a casualness to the way that you're presenting them that I also think is very in line with the work itself and your personality. With the bell, and forgive me if I think maybe you explained this more when the audio was cutting out. Will you explain to me again the symbol of the bell and what that means to you, how you came across it, and what made you want to make a large active piece in the space?
Can you guys hear me from mine now or no? Yes? Okay, cool. So the bell is sort of interesting. It's something I've been thinking about for a long time, and it sort of comes from two directions. One, like I have a big thing in my practice about copper as a material. Like I'm very invested in copper as a material, and I like consider it to be like a conscious collaborator in my process. And there's a big thing with memory and copper being this sort of proxy to my memory, or like, and so I have a thing with working with the same plates, and they're very important to me, like my plates, and so on one hand, like I did this thing a while ago with, where I was using an oscilloscope while working my plates. So when it's like an electrical measuring device. So when I would hook it up to my plate, and when I would touch a tool or my hand to the copper, it would, go through the copper as conductive and into this machine and show me a little picture, basically representing like my touch to this item. And I was really interested in that, and this sort of different dimension of communication that I was getting with this material that I was like, coveting in my practice. And so the bell was sort of a way to like give a different sort of voice to this material, and like a different form of communication to this material, where like this relation of body and labor to this material, and giving it like a physical voice in the sense of like the tone of the bell. And then on the other hand, I'm really interested in the idea or the concept of a bell being like a sound print matrix, you know what I mean? So in the idea that like, a bell is a container for this sound that is repeatable in the same way that a print matrix is a container for this image, a multiple of this image. So it's sort of on two sides was something that was really interesting to me. And I'm very proud that it actually does ring and hold the sound. And so it's a combination of my own personal attachment to copper, and also this sort of expanding of print, or what a print and what a multiple can be.
Thank you, that's great.
Yeah, that's lovely, Alex. It's nice to hear you sort of talk a little bit more in depth about the work. I'm really struck by just sort of your interest in process, and how the work in some ways is about process, but it becomes sort of more conceptual even, and that you're like, you have this investment in the malleability of the metal, that is like connected to this process that you're interested in, but then you're also like sort of you're showing through the work the process, both the natural process and the sort of like hand forged or hand carved process, or the hand manipulated. So thinking about, like, I love this idea of like printing the patina. I think that's really great. And I would encourage you, I think making monoprints, basically this idea of making monoprints where you're working with a matrix, but the print is never the same. You're working in a serial nature, as opposed to like a addition or a repeated thing, and encourage you to sort of play around with different kinds of inks or materials that you can print with, and how those things respond differently to like what's going on with the metal, what's going on with the patina, what's going on with the chemistry that's left on there once you've etched it. I wrote down tons of things. I think you covered the importance of the bell, and I loved hearing about that. I also think it's just this interesting thing of just your investment as an artist who is making art about making art in this way. And I really love that. I think it's really, it's conceptually rich, but in some ways it's also very base, and I really appreciate that.
Thank you so much.
I'd also kind of say, like, I get your grad school frowny face sentiment, but give yourself time, and grad school can be a place where you can really further explore with a kind of institutional support some of the stuff that you're exploring now or that you might be exploring in 10 years. And, there was 15 years for me between BFA and MFA. And I don't regret that time at all. And I think you have the right attitude of like going out in the world and just trying to see what it's like to be an artist and not have the pressure to just dive right into grad school. I think that's smart. And as someone who is like really just in the past decade been able to sort of build a studio that is even semi-functional, it's a big challenge, and I encourage you to tackle it as much as you can. So thank you.
Yeah, Alex, I agree with that. I think it was nice to see your thoughts about where you'd like to go next, and I encourage you to do that. Just start right away and do it as quickly as possible. This studios always take longer to create and find all your things again. So I think also what I'm excited for you too, because the studio will allow for you to be working on multiple projects at once and take your time building them, adding these really rich layers that I'm seeing in all of the work here. You mentioned in the beginning of your presentation that the prints tend to be one-offs, and so they become these sculptures, and then you are also adding the process components right next to them, which is a beautiful type of relationship and reveal of what the behind the scenes look like. And I would definitely encourage you to keep doing that. And again, presenting them in this casual, maybe casual is not the right word. They seem relaxed. They seem comfortable being in the space with one another and their components. So I would definitely, and that's not just because I'm in sculpture, but I definitely would like for you to continue making sculptures.
It's funny, and Alex, we talked, and I'm sort of responding to you, Kari, too. Like Alex and I talked about this a little bit in his shows. Like it's a very unprintmakerly thing to do, to show your plates with your prints. Like it's kind of like, no in some ways. But I think there is something about, and I like, I think casual, it kind of fits with this like big plate just kind of leaning against the wall casually, in this image. And but I hear what you say, that there's like a comfortability in the way that things are presented. And I think Alex, and I think the reason that you get away with showing the plates with the work is that like you are just kind of making work about the making of the work. And so like it allows for that sort of like transparency, quote unquote. And I wonder, I think that it would be amazing to have 25 of these monoprints made with this plate over 10 years, all together, and then with the plate. And there's a lot of different ways that I think you could explore that theme. Yeah, I tend to agree with Kari. Like the presentation, there's a lot of potential for it to seem contrived when you do stuff like this, and it doesn't really feel like that at all. And I think that's a success.
You guys so much. Comfortable is such a compliment. I really appreciate that. And it was really cool, like on you saying like showing them, years and years from the same plate. Like that is sort of like the end goal. And even just like that plate that's leaning against the wall with the yellow print, the plate on the opposite, or the print on the opposite wall, is from that same plate. And even just from like 2 years apart on the same plate, it was super, like, it was for me at least, it was almost emotional seeing these two things and seeing the difference in those two images. And I think like a lot of my art making is like very selfish, and it was sort of like in terms of like doing a lot for myself, and I'm thinking it's a time for me to reflect. And I think that seeing these two prints 2 years apart was like very personally gratifying. And so I definitely have hopes to do more of that in the future. And thank you guys so much for your super nice comments. Like everything is super nice. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Alex.
Thank you, Alex. Good work. All right, so now we are going to shift to Juliana, who is also in the room with Alex. All right, yay, there you are.
Okay, can everyone see that? Okay, cool. So my name is Juliana Martinez. I'm obviously a print media major. And this is my presentation. Okay, so I was born here in San Francisco, always have been in the Bay Area, based here. I'm the oldest of three. And I started drawing when I was like 4, but never became serious about it till I was like 13. I got into printmaking probably like my sophomore year of high school, and I did a lot of like screen printing. I basically lived in Mission Graphica, the one in like San Francisco, and that's where I kind of got this like sort of attachment to printmaking. But I also have like some little cyanotype prints. Like I always delved into that print like world when I was younger, as well as like film photography, which is also like I feel like another form of print that I really like was attached to when I was younger. Yeah, it's like a little intro. So some of my artistic influences would be Aya Takano, Diana Alvarado, Yoshimura Nara. A lot of these artists do like, I don't think the right word would be like childish, but like childlike imagery in their work. It's very like cartoony. They're kind of like cute in a way, which I kind of don't like using that word, but because it kind of like downgrades work. But kind of those type of like concepts, specifically for Aya Takano, they do a lot of like characters, like original characters that kind of like are in this like dream-like state. And for Diana, she does like ceramic work, and they're like little like cute characters that she tries to like reclaim the word cute, like tries to take it away from like weakness, and kind of like make these sculptures that like go back to memories and like childhood, as well as incorporating like Latinx like culture. And then for Yoshimura Nara, as well as like childlike imagery, a lot of like cartoony little figures, very, I want to say like simplified characters that he makes. And a lot of his work art is basically like something he said is like against social pressures. So I guess like the everyday life, kind of like an escape from reality, is what his work kind of like falls towards. These are set images of the work. So on the far left is Yoshimura Nara's work. As you can see, it's like the little cartoony little figures, like cute again. For the middle one is Diana Alvarado, one of her little sculptures called Onguito. And then for the far right is Aya Takano's print. They're all very much not printmaking artists, but I do feel like I got a lot of like inspiration or influences from them because of what they do and what they speak towards. Yeah. Oh, and a quote that I wanted to include was from an artist that she kind of like worked with Diana Alvarado for a while. You can kind of see in the images that it's like kind of similar work. And like in the like the little like cute realm, dreamlike realm. But the quote says, so Narumi dives headlong into her feelings, creating pieces that embody the physical representation of a diary entry from the depths of her mind. And then she says, that's how I process all of my pieces. What birds the value of my work is me being able to reflect how I'm feeling on the inside. I write words on my pieces, but the colors I use and the facial expressions and the way I structure the pieces act as this cryptic language of me having a conversation with myself. And I like totally resonate with that like 100%, because I feel like a lot of my work can come off as like what is that, or like what is it saying, because usually it doesn't have text. I try and incorporate a couple things here and there, but a lot of my work is very like personal to me, and I kind of like hide it in a way so it's not like super obvious to the eye, but people can tell there's like a sort of expression coming through with the work. Yeah, so here's some interest in my work. This one's called I kind of can't see the title. This is called Disassociate. I did this piece during the pandemic where I totally did not have like I didn't have a studio space, nothing. I basically just bought like a little baby screen and did like these like watercolor screen prints. Which like totally worked, did not think it would. Totally stained my screen though, but it was worth it. I was really obsessed with this piece because I don't usually work with color, or at least a lot of color. It's like very intimidating, I feel like, getting the right colors on prints. But yeah, this is one of my pieces where I was kind of thinking throughout the pandemic of like disassociation and kind of like going through it and like thinking a lot about like things that had happened in my life during that time and what I was doing to kind of like figure myself out, but disassociating in the process. This is another print during the same exact time, during the pandemic, same like medium watercolor through the screen print. It's called Grabbers. Basically just like a little figure being reached out towards. They're totally not happy about it. They're uncomfy and everything. And it's just another one of those things where like I don't include text. It's kind of just like what you see. Oh, and I included like a sort of ghost print that's like kind of a little bit messy, where I would intentionally like put still extra watercolor on top of the second ghost print. But in some spaces I'd leave it empty. So I would still get some sort of image that was like distorted to kind of continue that like weird like negative expression that I'm trying to bring through my characters. And this piece right here, I believe it was done during the pandemic as well. I used like old cloth, like clothes that I had laying around that I didn't really want, or had like nasty memories attached to it. And I like sewed it all together, kind of making this like canvas of a sort. And I embroidered some little figures on it, kind of like two versions of myself when I was younger. Like I kind of use like my hair as a timeline, because I feel like throughout the years that's how I figured out when something happened or how it happened during that time. The text reads, "In this lifetime, I will not dismiss the situations that occur and presents itself as danger." So this is like one of the bigger like texts that I actually include in my work, which I usually don't do, and just kind of giving like a more of a glimpse into what I'm feeling when making this work. Yeah, and that one's called journal entry. Yeah, and then this print, this one was kind of just like a dream type of print, nothing too like serious, because a lot of my work does fall under like disassociation, like emotional abuse and like manipulation and stuff like that. This one was kind of like more free, kind of more playful, but still going into that like childlike type of theme that I like bringing in through my work. Oh yeah, so onto my thesis work. So this was one of like the main pieces in my like thesis show. The whole show itself is called Secret Safe Space. So all the pieces kind of go around the same topic within each other. So this one's called Safety Blanket. It's a 8.5 by 6.5 feet piece of fabric that has like a couple little like screen prints on top of it, as well as like patches and like buttons, yarn sewn onto it. Yeah, I included like some detail shots to see like one of the main like crocheted yarn pieces was like this like big long like tear that's coming from one of the characters. But yeah, so that's that one. And this piece is called Vulnerability. It's a book that I worked on that kind of goes a little more into like some of the topics that I think about when creating my work, or at least this series of work. Yeah, so some of the text involves like, discuss confusion, lust, like emotional abuse, and stuff like that. But yeah, I make sure to bring through the expression, I include like sad colors, if that makes sense, or like sad expressions. Like you can tell like a certain character is like going through it or just not having a good time. But yeah, that's this one. Oh, this is a close-up of the fabric piece that's hung above. This was a film photograph on color film. It was taken in Richmond, California. But yeah, I included it above it, kind of like this is where I was at when certain things happened, of when my whole work kind of developed in my brain, essentially. Okay. And these are my two last prints, I believe, that were included in my thesis show. The one on the left is called Manipulation, which is a lithostone, and the one on the right is called Muffled Watch, and it's a copper plate dry point. These prints are both kind of in conversation with each other, though they're not like together. So the one on the left kind of has this like text that's like totally inverted. So some of it isn't legible on purpose. So kind of just like writing down my thoughts, but not letting the person really read through it because it's like really heavy stuff. And then the one on the opposite side, the only text it has says "Los adultos no escuchan," which means like the adults don't listen or they can't hear. So basically, like there's this like figure like being reached out towards like all these like creepy hands. The little circles are like eyes, just like staring, and just kind of giving this like sort of like environment that's like totally not safe, totally not like good at all. And yeah, so that's for these. Okay, so for works in progress, I just included a bunch of like random little sketches I had like on my iPad of things that are kind of either in conversation with the work that I'm doing right now or just random little things that I do on the side. And I included some books on the side that I make because I really love bookmaking. I just haven't had the time to do so, but that's one of the things I kind of want to include with the work that I'm working on right now. But yeah, so I guess some of the goals I have for after graduation would be like, I guess making like a book that's in more conversation with what I'm talking about right now, and like my experience in certain things. And something that I also think about, but will probably not happen right after school, but like a studio space or like collaborating with artists. Because I've been in close conversation with like a bunch of people that do art. And they like already graduated and they're like doing their own thing and just like learning about that world and seeing what, like how I fit in it would be probably something I'd looking into like right after I graduate. But yeah, yeah, thank you. And this is you can follow me on Instagram or reach out if you need to. But yeah, that's it.
Thank you, Juliana. That's great. Do you mind maybe keeping your screen up and scrolling back to some of the works that were in your exhibition? Yeah, that's great. Okay. I'm excited about the way you're using different types of materials. I think this one and the purple pieces that were printed on, was it silk? There were a few ahead.
The photograph that was printed on fabric?
Yeah.
No,
What
it
kind
wasn't.
of fabric was it?
Sorry, what?
What kind of fabric was it?
I believe it was cotton sateen, if I remember correctly.
I really appreciate seeing those textures in your work and having the prints be, may they be a photograph or a print. I like seeing those on those pieces of texture. And I think this one really excites me too, because it does seem like a bit of a departure from your other work. And it looks like you took a lot of risks with how to connect the thread, where to place the thread, and what kind of emotions come from that. It's both a soft and very frightening piece at the same time. So yes, I appreciate that. And can you speak a little bit to the use of the squares within this piece? Some of them are highlighted. I'm looking at the bottom one that has the thread attached to it. And then also the, are these cyanotype prints along the edges?
They're indigo dyed fabric.
Oh, right, okay, I knew that.
Yeah, so for the little like patches and stuff, those were kind of just included to kind of get this like sense of like child, like I guess kind of like fixing the pieces of like a little messy blanket that a child would like drag, or like their childhood blanket and stuff like that. Though one of them is totally like a pocket, like at the very top there's like a little bear. And it was just to add that aspect of this is a children's blanket. This is for comfort, but it's totally like messed up in a way. So yeah, so like those patches are kind of just like to like fix the messed up parts of the blanket. As for the yarn being attached to the button and stuff, that was like totally like random. I kind of just wanted to see like what motions I could create with the yarn, like how it can interact a bit more with the fabric itself.
Okay, good.
Yeah, Juliana, I would echo some of what Kari was saying in terms of like, I think the really interesting parts of the work are where these combinations of techniques start to sort of have a conversation within one piece. And like, even though you sort of, in some ways disregarded the like pillows, I thought that there was something really, really special about those. And I think the work is so personal, and having these kinds of objects like a blanket or like a pillow that like you can really like have a bodily association with, I think is really interesting. I also love this idea of like character development as a way to both hide and explore self-portraiture, and how that sort of starts to come up. Can you talk a little bit more about sort of the characters and your specific style of characters? Because there's kind of a nod to anime, there's a nod to sort of like, you know, kind of DIY indie, like cutesy zine culture, but there's also, I feel like you sort of have kind of really developed your own sort of persona with the characters. Can you sort of talk about that if possible?
Yeah, so I guess like for the longest time, I totally struggled with finding like, I guess like my style. And I remember like when I was younger, I'd be on Tumblr a lot and see a lot of that like indie, like those little like comics and stuff that people had, and they would like be super like simplified. Because I never like would see myself as like making these like complex, like has a whole outfit, like doing all these things like crazy expressions and stuff like that. I never like fell into that category, so I kind of like found this like way of kind of simplifying my own characters and kind of developing them like as they came up in my head or like as I designed them. And like sometimes I would stick to some and sometimes I wouldn't. And also like I feel like the little like anime part that you commented on, I watch anime, so I feel like that's kind of like a little inspiration too, because it's kind of just like a little like aesthetic thing that I'm like, oh yeah, like I like how those eyes look, or I like how like the hair is moving here. So a lot of like outside inspiration and just like being attached to those like simplified comics I used to see when I was younger, or what I see now really. I don't know. I've always been attached.
Do you know the work of Adrian Tamine?
No, I do not.
I can put it in the chat. It's not stylistically not very similar. He's sort of he's a graphic novelist, and there's like a quietness about his work, and he deals a lot with kind of different kind of social anxieties and different kind of interactions. I think you might be interested in looking at it. He's been, I mean, he lived in San Francisco in sort of the late 90s, early 2000s, and he's really involved in the sort of like the indie music scene as an artist. He did record covers for people and stuff like that, and was always at shows. And he's a really interesting, you might look into his stuff. I'll put his name in the chat. But yeah, I think the character development part of it, and particularly thinking about them as these sort of self-portraits and how you're evolving them as like, you know, you give that example of like a before and after with the hair and like your younger self and your contemporary self, and playing with those kinds of things I think is so interesting. Thank you so much for, it's very personal work and I appreciate your sharing of it. So
Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you for sharing this with us. Though I think the character development, it seems like that's a good next step for you moving forward. And the one thing I'd like to add to that is when speaking about the work and your influences, you mentioned or you used the words childlike often. And I would think about what other words can be related to childlike synonyms and or words that relate, kind of float around a childlike attitude. And the ones that I jotted down were naive, green, unadulterated, and pure. And those might assist you in where these characters go and what kind of childlike do they convey, or what could they convey? All right, Juliana, thank you so much again. Good work.
Thank you. Thank you too.
All right, and now we are going to shift over to Joseph. And Joseph, would you mind sharing your screen with us? Thank you.
Sounds
the hair
good.
worked out.
Yeah, kind of. Got a little crazy, but we're having fun. Let's see here. Let me share my screen. Go there. Hit the share. Hit the ask. How do I exit? No. How do you exit out of here? I hit the X button. There we go. Sorry, this is important. There, now we got the movie. So hi, my name is Joseph Blake. I'm a print media major. Yeah, and this is just a little GIF I wanted to stick on there real quick. So I really started my artistic, development in high school through photography. I had my own Tumblr account. Where I'm from is very rural Washington. These are both pictures about a mile from my house or less. And so I just like took a lot of landscape photography and photos of me and my friends. That's a picture on the right is of my cousin. Just like using a rope swing that we hung off the bridge. And so I kind of developed the start of my artistic career through photography, and sort of my first artistic discourse was actually through Tumblr, sort of interfacing with people, talking about images, mostly aesthetics and stuff. Yeah, when I came out here, I applied to CCA as a photo student, and my mom and I went to the MoMA, and I sort of had my first real experience with art there on like the 4th or 5th floor. They had a Philip Guston room that isn't up right now, but it had more of his figurative works. And this painting, the Sphinx, was up there. It's a pretty huge painting. And I just had this really, I was like, this is how art's supposed to make me feel. I don't know, just like this almost hard to put words to it, just felt a lot of life exuding from the painting. And yeah, so Philip Guston has been someone I've delved into a lot and sort of influenced how I look at my work as well, especially like the Zen aspect of making, sort of losing yourself, losing your head while you make. More currently, another painter that I'm really looking at is Leon Golov. I find the graphic quality of his paintings really important, the viscerality, sort of his depiction of the realness of violence and sort of the confusion that comes along with it. And sort of like the fissure of clarity that hostility presents is just really, those are really important themes for me, and how he depicts them, I feel like is so important. So I guess back to why I came to school. I was a photo student, but like pretty soon after getting here, like a year in, I took my first print class, and I was like, oh, I'm way more interested in the materiality of images. I'm way more interested in the materials, the process of printing. I love the photograph, but I love the material, the substrate more. And so going even further with that sort of extreme, Jamie actually taught the first paper making class in a while, and I was in that, and I had a lot of fun making paper and sort of really through the print department getting into substrate alone rather than the matrix part of that dichotomy. And so this is a handmade book on some handmade paper. I used wire inclusions of split networking wires, and I embedded them in the book. I used toner transfer with like Xerox prints, used peppermint oil, wintergreen oil to displace the pigment, the toner, and print it onto these pages that would have been really hard to print on otherwise with all these bumps. And then, yeah, I collected all these images from online, things that are sort of burnt into my memories, like, you know, ads, memes, help buttons, privacy, all that kind of stuff. Called it a hypertext document to the World Wide Web. And yeah, just sort of an artifact of my experience of overstimulation, I suppose. Sort of in the same body of work, I call these the transgressions. There's two pieces actually. There's transgressions 2. Transgressions 1 and 2 are sister pieces. They sort of belong together. It's abaca and cotton handmade paper with more wire inclusions, toner transfer. So basically the same materiality as the book, but then also I have a collograph, this sort of like frame around this image that I sourced from Google Maps is a wire collograph. So printing with the wires, inking the wires and then printing them on the paper through a press. So this text is from Craigslist, from the divorce forum. And this this picture is from Google Maps. It's both of these pictures are, and both of this text is from Craigslist. And then the Google Maps images are from Missouri, where I was born, St. Louis. But my parents split when I was really young, and so making this work was sort of this. It was this back and forth between like looking at these facades of houses that could have been around where I was, and then sort of that are presented to me through the web, and then sort of transgressing the boundary of that house by going onto the forum and sort of seeing what people could be experiencing in these houses, and sort of gaining new light and sort of new, I guess, empathy for my parents, I suppose, in a way. Yeah, moving on, like after getting into handmade substrates, I just I don't know, a series of things happened. I don't really know how it happened. It was during the lockdown and stuff when I was out of school. I got into thermal printing. I was like, oh, this is great. Point of service machines, like label printers, that sort of thing for like warehouses. They all print thermally, so no ink process, all the ink's in the paper. It's super fast, super ephemeral, and really, I don't know, it was a lot of fun to get into. And this is a piece called Shades of a Garden Campus that I made in collaboration with my friend Joel, who's back here. And it's just to pay homage to the legacy of the Oakland campus and the people who have inhabited it and what we're sort of taking from it. Yeah, it was a big piece, lots of fun. And it kind of pushed me directly. It was a week before my thesis show. And then my thesis, I had the presentation, more receipt paper. This one is a 12-foot by 18-foot piece called Troubled. It's a picture of my teeth that I sort of distorted. It exists on like a little over 1,000 feet of printed receipt roll. It was a lot of printing. This is a close-up. So thermal printers are only on or off pixels. They don't print gray tones at all. So everything has to go through a dither, pattern dither, or some sort of halftone, and which presents a really interesting quality to the work. When you sort of get up closer, the image totally breaks down, especially when you're printing something large scale. Here's another one called Profit. So on the left side is an image of the print with the printer. His name is Carlo. He did all the work for the show. He's great. He's also a performance artist now. And on the right side is a video that played while Carlo stood there and watched it, or the Prophet, I should say. And it printed the words "It's okay" over and over and over on itself about 250 times, I think, something like that. And it took about 90 minutes. And I took a 30-minute clip of that and recorded it and showed it on a piece of Kozo paper that I made as a screen. And so these two pieces, Prophet and then what I call prophetic dilemma, a self-defeating prophecy in a way, something when uttered invalidates itself. And so I'm okay, or it's okay, prints over and over on itself until it ends up with the print on the left, the Prophet. Yeah, that one was a fun one. And then this one was my favorite piece from my show. It's called The Vein Image. So it's a lenticular image. This is the same piece. It's made on pallet wood. It's about 7 foot by 7 foot. The left side and the right side. So the right side is self-portrait with, I just sort of double visioned eyes, distortion of it myself. And then on the left is 4 figures sort of engaging in this, what I like to think is like almost a Leon Golov-esque composition of, this is called tolerance training. So it's this special military training where they like hit a guy with a hammer and he has a block on him. And it's just this like super weird performative gesture, sort of very aggressive and confusing. And so I used this double image lenticular thing to sort of end up with this frontal image, which is a mix of the two. This is my preferred perspective of the piece. And sort of it relates to my own life, my own struggles with my self-ideation as of now, sort of how I personify harm in my life and direct it towards myself sometimes. And so this was my favorite piece from my show. And yeah, I don't know. Now, this is my studio. It's a mess, and it still is, and it's where I'm sitting right now. And I guess, I don't know, I want to do open call shows, apply for grants, residencies as I leave school. And one most important thing is we have a show happening pretty soon. About 10 or 15 of us graduating seniors are doing a show at called The Next Stop. It's going to be at Book/Shop right next to Blue Bottle on Broadway on May 13th. It's going to be a big group show. So I definitely recommend you all to come if you can. And thank you. My name is Joseph Blake. Here's my email at the bottom. And yeah, I just want to thank everybody who's been involved with my education throughout the years, and all the homies, Joel, and yeah, and my mom too. I think she's here. I love you, Mom. That's it.
Thank you, Joseph. That was great. And hi, Joseph's mom. Hello. Do you mind scrolling back to, I think that yeah, this one, that's perfect. Joseph, having not seen your work before, I'm really excited about what you're up to. And this piece in particular, I appreciate how you showed us the right side and the left side, and then the full view from just right standing in front of it. And I think it's a really nice dynamic piece, and the way that the images integrate is lovely. So I'm excited about this. Do you think that this is the next step for you, something you might pursue moving forward?
Yeah, this form is definitely going to continue to follow me, I think. I am interested in taking this to, this image is gone now. It got sun faded, it's done. So I've been thinking about returning to this with other print materials, or making other forms with it. Yeah, there's one form that I've been thinking about a lot recently, which is instead of 2 images sitting on one plane like this, would be 4 images. And so instead of like this, it would be like the beveled surface of a shipping container or something. So you have the 45-degree angle image on either side, but then you also have an image that sits below on the base plane, and then an image that sits out front. So I've definitely, this was really fun, and I want to move forward with this form still.
Yeah, I really like it. I like how sculptural it became. The thing that impresses me the most about the work that you showed is the scale, though, especially that 12 by 18 work that was in maybe IPW.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. I'm thrilled by the scale of this, and that and that it's on receipt paper, and that you explored the thermal print. It's just fascinating, and it makes for a great image, and I can see your aesthetic really clearly in the work. And I immediately saw it as self-portrait too. All of them seem to be autobiographical, and this one, you know, it's disgusting, it's large. I'm glad I'm not standing in front of it. It might be a little bit too much. So anyway, I encourage you to keep going with this scale and the personal topics you're exploring.
Thank you.
I guess, I mean, I don't know, Joseph, you and I have had so many conversations, and you know how proud I am of you, and how lucky I feel to have been able to work with you over the last couple of years. And something that's really nice, I think, especially because we sort of have had this relationship that was really disrupted by the pandemic, and something that's really nice for me to see, like, some of the early work that you made in that first paper making class, and the work that you're making now, is this like really clear through line of like things that you're interested in terms of, not just in terms of like exploration of materials and themes, but these things around technology and around the, you know, what you call the World Wide Web, and not just the infrastructure of it, but also like as well as the content. And then how this, you know, there's this for me, and there's a real sort of tie-in to sort of capital and the use of like both discarded materials like pallets, or this kind of material that is particularly used in the service of capital in terms of like receipt paper, and how you sort of are manipulating that. And I think that there's probably so much content that you're creating on a real, almost like a subconscious level, this work because it's so complex when you start to pull apart your materials usage, the ephemerality, the way that the kinds of images that you're using, where you're pulling them from, why you're pulling them. You know, I think this talking of like thinking about Tumblr and thinking about sort of the specific way in which Tumblr created or creates a content feed that and the way it gets personalized, I think, is specific to that medium. And then thinking about how like this exploration of images or creation of images through that medium. And you said something really, really interesting that is worth thinking about, and for you and for all of us in some ways, is like this idea of the materiality of images. And you don't talk about the materiality of the work, but this idea that an image can have materiality, I think, is like is a really almost like philosophical idea. And I think the manipulation of the images, I think you're pushing against that a little bit, because an image is something that we just hold in our mind. Even when we're looking at it, it's something that our mind is making, you know, because we're unable like mechanically to actually comprehend the entirety of the world around us. So like the idea of an image just being something in our mind, and that something in our mind can have a materiality, I think is like, it's just a really interesting concept. And I really like that. And the other thing I think, you know, the other thing I wrote down is like this really like this nod to Golov and like the impact of size and the impact of scale, and how deftly you're sort of engaging with that idea, because these things, they are at scale, but their presence is very delicate and soft, and like the imagery might be kind of violent or disturbing, but like when you encounter them, they're not as objects, they're not confrontational in this way, which I think is really nice. I think you approach that, or you sort of engage with that part of the work in a really sensitive way, which I think is so nice. I am very, very proud of you.
Thank you.
Joseph, additionally, the piece that had the printer constantly printing, can we go back to that one? Right, okay, and so it was looping through?
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
I liked the way that you were speaking about this work and the humor that you placed into the piece, and I would encourage you to keep using humor, and yeah, and I think it's such a, so the piece is black because it's been printing. What did it say? It's going to be okay. It's okay.
Yeah, it's okay.
It's okay.
Mhm.
So it's just covering its okays on top of its okays.
Sort of, yeah, just like an invalidation of self in a way. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I would love for you to keep exploring this aspect of your work and to embed humor into the work. And I like how it also brings the tool into the room, similar to what Alex had been showing us. It brings the tool into it and makes it a participant, or I think you called it a performance artist.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure.
It's also this like interesting meta conversation that you're having like with yourself in the making of the work, to sort of like personify the machine that you use, but then also kind of just let do the thing that it wants to do, but it's also watching itself do the thing that it's doing or has done, is just like, it's funny. It's and weird.
Here right now with us. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
We won't talk about him.
No, it's great. You're also saying all good things for sure. Yeah. The printers have they have their own. We have 3 of them in the studio. They all have names. Moose was the first one. Carlo and Shiraz joined us later. So yeah, yeah, they all have their own little quirks. They're great. Yeah.
Excellent, good, and good names. Joseph, thank you so much for sharing your work with us.
Yeah, thanks, Joseph.
Thanks for having me.
And I guess so that is our final presentation. Michelle, would you like to say anything? Sorry to put you on the spot. I just was wondering if you would like to.
Yes, of course. So I'm just so inspired to see everybody's journeys, and I'm very grateful and appreciative that you are sharing your work with us. It's just a really satisfying and fulfilling and inspiring moment, I think, for everybody to be able to, have witnessed all of your triumphs, and all of the dedication and the time that you've spent in the studios exploring, growing, learning. So yeah, a big congratulations. We're really proud of everybody, and we're so excited to see what you do next. So yeah, congrats everybody.
Thank you, Michelle. And yes, absolutely. Good work. It was a pleasure to see, coming from ceramics and sculpture, it was a pleasure to see what you all are up to. And it gives me a much better understanding of your program and the field on a whole. And Jamie, thank you. Did you have any closing remarks?
No, I echo Michelle. Like, it's really, I mean, some of you I've worked with once a while ago, and some of you I've worked with the whole time that you've been here. It's just really nice to see your accomplishments, and you should all be very proud of yourselves. And it's a big milestone to finish undergrad and just go out there with some fierce determination about continuing this work that you're doing, because it's all very exciting. So congratulations.
Excellent. Well, I think that is it for this series of presentations. And of course, you can go to Portal and see more presentations as they occur in the future, starting, Ingrid, next Wednesday, I think.
Yeah, let me pull up the next schedule.
The next one should be ceramics and one textiles student.
Sorry, I just kind of put that one just up.
And thank you everyone also for staying a bit after our 5:30 time frame. I really appreciate it. And it's good to have you all here.
So we have our next BFA conversations. We have thesis conversations. We have one on Tuesday at 1 p.m. And that is with Jewelry Metal Arts. We have one on Wednesday, the 13th at 5 p.m. with Ceramics and Textiles. We have another on Friday, the 15th at 1:30 with Painting and Drawing. And there are plenty more on the portal. Be sure to support your fellow classmates. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you all so much.